Here are the highlights of this week's news on Japan Today. I'm Nathan, and did you know that Japan and Russia are still technically in a state of war? It turns out that a formal peace treaty was never signed between the two countries after World War II. And it looks like that won't be changing anytime soon. What's preventing a treaty? According to Russia, it's US military presence. At the moment, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is in Washington, having a summit with US President Joe Biden, with the two expected to discuss cooperation on defense equipment and a possible upgrade in the US military command structure in Japan. This does not please Moscow. A Kremlin spokesman said the de facto defense alliance is already there, and we know about the United States military potential that is stationed in Japan, by the way, close to our borders, he said. A territorial dispute over a Pacific island chain known in Russia as the Kurils and in Japan as the Northern Territories is another key issue. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said in January that Japan would have to drop territorial claims to the islands if it wants a peace treaty. Moscow withdrew from peace treaty talks with Japan and froze joint economic projects related to the islands in 2022 because of Japanese sanctions over Russia's war in Ukraine. Last week, we talked about how Japan was implementing a partial ban lift on ride-hailing services, aiming to address the taxi driver shortage. Well, we have an update. About 80 drivers launched the service on April 8th, the first day of operations, and by 9 a.m. on that day, it had been used around 50 times. The Tokyo Hire Taxi Association, one of the operators involved in the project, held a ceremony to commemorate the launch, demonstrating how drivers use a dedicated smartphone app to receive dispatch requests and to input health-related data concerning their fitness to drive. I want my taxi drivers going to the gym. The services are now available in Tokyo's 23 wards and the suburban areas of Musashino and Mitaka from Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. and on Saturday mornings from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. in case you missed the last train. As for future areas, expect more taxi options coming soon to Yokohama, Kyoto, Nagoya, Osaka, and Fukuoka. Japan doesn't exactly put out the red carpet for asylum seekers, and a new system starting in June is going to make it even tougher. A revision to the Immigration Control and Refugee Recognition Law will enable authorities to deport those who fail to reasonably argue their case in their first 3 asylum applications, essentially limiting the number of times someone can apply. The law has been criticized by opposition parties and lawyers who argue it could result in people being persecuted in their home countries upon their deportation. Under the current system, immigration authorities cannot return foreign nationals to their home countries while their asylum applications are being processed. And so, the government believes many have abused the system by applying multiple times so as to remain in Japan. Also part of these revisions, though, is a new rule taking effect on June 10th, which will allow asylum seekers to live in a community, in Japan of course, under the supervision of family members or supporters rather than being detained in immigration facilities. A 9-year-old girl died after she was hit by a train in Takasaki City, Gunma Prefecture on April 6th at around 8:50 a.m. at a train crossing on the Joshin Electric Line. Police said a witness called in and said a girl had been hit by a train after running onto the crossing, which had no gates nor alarms. Police said the girl was walking a dog with her grandfather when she suddenly ran ahead of him onto the crossing. Public broadcaster NHK reported that the driver of the 2-car train said he saw the girl holding a leash and that she appeared to be chasing after a dog. He applied the emergency brake, but the train could not stop in time. This story generated quite a bit of discussion among our readers because Japan has thousands of crossings that have no gates or alarms, and accidents like this are sadly not uncommon. The rail operators say they can't afford to install gates at every crossing and say it would be easier to simply remove the crossings entirely. But local residents who use the crossings in remote areas are opposed. Did you get a pay raise in the past year, but still can't keep up with price increases? Or even worse, are you stuck with the same wage? Stuck in purgatory as you watch the price of daikon radish go up exponentially, and now the price of making a nabe is 5 times as much and you can't have You're not alone. Japan's real wages in February were down 1.3% from a year earlier, marking the 23rd consecutive month of decline as salary increases failed to keep pace with inflation. Real wage growth, crucial for overcoming Japan's deflationary stagnation, has lagged behind price hikes, eroding households' purchasing power for nearly 2 years. I swear, these days I need to take out a 5th mortgage just to get one pizza delivered. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who I don't think is concerned about ordering pizza, has repeatedly asked business leaders to increase wages at a pace exceeding inflation. A finance ministry official, meanwhile, said prices have begun to stabilize and that the impact of spring wage negotiations, which, to be fair, saw the highest pay increases in 33 years, will be reflected in future data. Only time will tell. Are you thinking of getting a job in the anime industry in Japan? Before you do, here's something you should know. You'll be working a lot of overtime. A survey by the Nippon Anime and Film Culture Association shows that about half of the people working in the anime industry said they work over 225 hours per month, which equates to about 56 hours a week. Excluding voice actors who have different schedules, 30.4% said they work 10 hours or more daily, with the longest amount worked in 1 month being 336 hours, aka 84 hours a week. For time off, 58.5% reported having less than 6 days off per month, which, to be clear, includes the weekends, which you'd think would be 8 days in total minimum. For income, 37.7% said their net monthly income was 200,000 yen or below, though the association did point out they have a smaller gender wage gap than many other industries in Japan. As for side jobs, almost 80% said they do not have one, and scriptwriters and those involved in the finishing process had the lowest earnings of all members of the industry. And despite this, over 70% of people working in the anime industry say they want to continue working there. And now it's time for the weird and wonderful news brought to you by my plants. Happy Earth Day. I don't know. I don't know when Earth Day is. And now it's time for the weird and wonderful news. Police in Tokyo have arrested a 56-year-old man on suspicion of public indecency and property damage after he pressed his naked butt against a water faucet in a Setagaya Ward Park. According to police, the man, who claims to be self-employed, what does he do? Pressed his anus against a water fountain at around 2:20 a.m. on April 1st, which means it could count as an April Fool's joke. The police cannot arrest him. About 40 minutes later, police officers found the man, still naked butt, riding a bicycle, which sounds very painful with a naked butt, by the way, and arrested him. And then police took his smartphone and found a photo of him pressing his anus onto the faucet. Luckily, the park banned the use of the faucets for the rest of the day until they could clean it up. The man's motive was quoted as being, "I did it because I was sexually aroused. I used binoculars to make sure there were no people around beforehand." Why binoculars? How far away was he? He was looking at that fountain like, "I am aroused." Japan is famous worldwide for its high-tech toilets, and they have a new fan. US talk show host and comedian Jimmy Kimmel. After spending a week in Japan in late March, he opened his show one night last week with a monologue on Japan's toilets, saying, "I took my family to Japan this week, and I have to say, not only did I not encounter a single dirty bathroom, the bathrooms in Tokyo and Kyoto are cleaner than our operating rooms here." Kimmel said what blew him away was how clean bathrooms are across a wide variety of facilities in Japan, including truck stops. He was particularly impressed by Japan's bidets, which he describes as toilets that wash you from the inside out. There are dirty toilets in Japan too. You go to a toilet at 7-Eleven or Torikizoku anytime after 9 p.m., I guarantee you, covered in pee. You know, maybe the guy at the park just wanted to use a bidet. Japan's trains and subways are known for their efficiency, but they are also notorious for molestation. In the Tokyo metropolitan area, the JR Saikyo line has long held the dubious reputation of being the area's worst in terms of frequency of groping incidents, called chikan in Japanese. Recently, the Musashino line now has the top number of complaints, followed by the JR Takasaki line in second place and the Tobu-Tojo line in third. In fact, those have been the rankings for the last 4 years. The groping problem began to be addressed by many rail operators in 2004 by introducing women-only passenger cars during rush hour, though only in the morning for some reason. In recent years, JR East has installed security cameras on all of its approximately 8,500 commuter rail cars in the Tokyo metropolitan area, which police say can provide irrefutable evidence when arresting and prosecuting molesters. Vigilance on the Musashino line has also been boosted by an increase in the number of plainclothes and uniformed police officers on board. The governor of Shizuoka Prefecture doesn't seem to think much of vegetable sellers. Governor Heita Kawakatsu said he will resign after last week at a welcoming ceremony for new employees joining the prefectural government. For the full quote, during his speech, Kawakatsu said, "Everyone here is a brainy and intelligent person, unlike those who sell vegetables, take care of cows, or create things." Who doesn't create things? What does that mean? This isn't the first gaffe, obviously, from Kawakatsu, who first became governor in 2009. Last month, he was criticized for ranking regions within his prefecture based on how cultured they are. I should also add, the governor told the new recruits to remain honest and watch their language. Ironic. If you want to escape all the noise in Japan, there's a new cafe in Osaka that focuses on silence. Called Shoujo, the 16-seat cafe has eliminated chatter and background music, asking customers to bask in the silence. It's not just for the benefit of customers though, as the majority of the staff are actually hearing impaired. Staff will take orders via written notes or just pointing at the menu, and they're happy to share sign language tips to those who are interested. It's a perfect fit for the cafe's matcha experience where customers will whisk it themselves. After the cafe closes, staff offer hour-long one-on-one sign language classes, and with no verbal communication required, the cafe is particularly attuned to the needs of foreign customers who may not know Japanese. That's all for this week's news. I'm off to go negotiate the peace treaty between Moscow and Tokyo. It was a slow news week, but next week is gonna be the biggest news week ever, so stay tuned for more. Disclaimer, it could be even slower. If I'm wrong, you can't come at me.